G'day, audiophiles. We're back. It's the Sirens of Audio, and my name is Dwayne. I'm your host, and hosting alongside with me is Philip. G'day, Philip.
Yeah, g'day, Dwayne. G'day, everyone. It's so good to be here again.
And this is the one we've been waiting for because recently we spoke with Louise Jameson, and we spoke to her in depth about her time as Leela in the audio world of Doctor Who, some of her other acting as well. And this time, Philip, we're going to continue that discussion with Louise Jameson. But what are we going to talk about this time?
Well, once again, the range of topic is going to be pretty big, but we're going to have a bit more of a focus on her writing and her directing, as well as some of the other work she's done. So it's a pretty wide-ranging discussion, covering all sorts of topics, but certainly full of interesting anecdotes and great stories.
Okay, so to lead into that discussion with Louise, we're going to play a trailer for the first Doctor Who related Big Finish release she was involved with as a director. And it was a companion chronicle starring Katie Manning. It was The Ghost in the Machine.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who, The Companion Chronicles, Ghost in the Machine.
Doctor, this is Jo. Though, of course, you already know that. I'm in the control room and I'm just wondering where you are. And, well, if everything's all right. Doctor? Hello? Is anyone there? Hello?
You should not have come here. Leave now while you still can.
I can't leave. I'm trapped here, just like the rest of you. No, Jo. You have to go outside. It's what the Doctor would have wanted you to do.
So it's been absolutely great talking about Leela stuff, but you've actually done so many other things with Big Finish. And I want to focus a bit about Atla Girl towards the end because that's an amazing production. But do you want to talk a bit about some of the other shows you've done? I mean, Omega Factor, Survivors, Shilling and Sixpence, Blake 7. What about all those? Do you just love working? Is that why you just like glutton for punishment?
I do think I'm a workaholic. Yeah, if I'm addicted to anything, it's keeping busy. I just think that you have any right to be bored in this world. There's so much available. So yes, I am a bit of a glutton. Omega Factor was great. That was they allowed me to write for that, and they also allowed me to write for Survivors. In fact, invited me to write for Survivors. So, worked with the wonderful Matt Fitton, who kind of oversaw my writing in a very gentle, caring, and educative way. So David Richardson is responsible for that. They were actively seeking female writers, and he just had a hunch that I could do it. So it took a long while for me to have the courage to claim the title writer. I still feel a bit of a sham, if I'm honest.
Well, you shouldn't do.
I'm struggling with the script at the moment for Tom and I. One of the historical ones. I'm not allowed to say any more than that, but I've done so much research, I can't tell you. I became fascinated with, I'll tell you this much, forgotten female scientists. So it's in that territory. But it's like every time I learn a new fact, it kind of, you must know this as a teacher, every time you learn a new fact, there's another 6 books you got to read.
Yes.
The more you know, the more you don't know. It's so frustrating. You can't ever go, right, well, I know that now, because there's so much more.
Life used to be about making easy choices, didn't it? What do I have for tea? No, not anymore. Now we have to make hard choices to survive.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Survivors. Series 2 box set.
Jen, I have to do this. It's always been about finding Peter, you know that.
I know.
Everyone left behind. We've all had friends, loved ones die. We've all been through the same thing.
Survival of the fittest. That's what it used to be about. And so it is again.
Civilization needs rules so we can all survive.
Pete! You don't know what's out here.
Daniel's out here! Daniel! What the hell is that?
What's that noise?
Start the engine.
What?
Just start the engine now!
Greg may not have much time.
No! We're not dying like this. No way.
It makes no sense for the last people on Earth to kill one another. No! Put it down! You can't! You can't!
Don't be an idiot. You want to get yourself shot?
What are they doing to him?
Big Finish. We love stories.
You did it. You actually did it.
Can I just go back slightly? Before you got into writing, directing, you met a couple of people through Big Finish that you started collaborating with over time. One was Helen Goldwyn, and did you meet her on Tomorrow People? Is that where you first met?
I think I did meet her on Tomorrow People, and then she wrote a one-woman show for me, Willing Faces, which you've seen. And she's a really good friend. We're writing together at the moment, actually. We do 2 hours a week on Zoom, and a sitcom is emerging.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow. Watch this space. Yeah, she's so easy to work with, Helen. And we complement each other, I think, very well, because she dots every I and crosses every T. She's very, I'm not going to say pedantic because that means I don't like it, but I do like it.
Precise?
Thorough. Yes, precise. Very, very precise. And I'm like, oh, what about if they break down and have a complete nervous breakdown in this scene? It's like pushing everything to its absolute, to the extent that it can go. So I think and to explore emotion and relationship, and I think that we complement each other very well in that respect. And
I think in the Tomorrow People, you were playing her mother. Is that right?
Yeah, I was. And
is that the kind of relationship you have?
Well, I feel more like an equal to her, but I'm always kind of shocked that I'm 70 next year. It always shocks me how old I am. So I'm sure people look at me and look on me as a maternal figure, but I always see, I've got a lot of friends in their 30s and 40s, and especially women, and maybe they are looking for a mother. I feel like a peer group, part of their peer group.
Another collaborator that you met through Big Finish, I think, was Nigel Fairs. How did you start off with Nigel?
Nigel wrote one of the companion chronicles for me. Or actually, he reminded me the other day that Tomorrow People was one of the first things I did with him. But my big, strong memory is this beautifully written companion chronicle.
The Catalyst.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. And we just teamed up after that. Shortly after that, he had to go up north to look after some friends' pigs. And he said, why don't you come visit? And I thought, yeah, I will. So I went and visited. Then I went on tour and he came to visit me in Scotland. And we've just been best friends ever since and written all kinds of things collaboratively. My Gay Best Friend being the most successful of those. And I've directed stuff he's written and he's directed stuff I've written. And we just work together all the time.
You know of the lost world.
These are my final days. The world that I came to call my home is gone, and with it, everything that stood between me and death.
If you are so afraid, go back to your mama and your table manners and your stale meat.
I'm not afraid.
What is it? The end of the world could be.
I have seen so much.
You will remain where you are, Homo sapien.
Finally, I grow old. Yes, but I am enlightened and unafraid.
You're a nothing. A worthless female of your species who has no use as a soldier and has been kept alive for one reason. The Zednai require information, and you will provide it.
So those are two major collaborators that you have. It was quite a few years before you wrote your first piece, wasn't it? Which was The Abandoned. Is that right?
I pitched The Abandoned to David, and David said, yes, absolutely, write it. And then I chickened and I said to Nigel, will you go write it with me? And he said, yes, I will. And we did. And then David came to me, I think the next thing was The Survivors. And he said, I want you to write this on your own. And I went, but. And he went, no, you can write this on your own. And I did. And, you know.
That's the episode with just all the female cast only, isn't it? Is that right? In a store, I remember that one being quite confronting.
Yeah.
It's a really confronting work. It's interesting.
Mother's courage.
That's right. What is it about women writers that are able to dig so deeply and sometimes so tragically into lives? I mean, if you think of people like, all the best crime writers are women, Agatha Christie and Dorothy Sayers, and they're this macabre sense of people. And some of your work is equally, bleak's the wrong word, but desperate in terms of personality. What is it that makes you dig so deeply into the human spirit that it can be so painful?
That is such an interesting question. I think you probably have to talk to my therapist to get a clear answer. I mean, we all carry stuff, don't we? And sometimes we carry stuff that we don't even know we're carrying. And it's not until you are brave enough to really analyze yourself that you know where it's coming from. And I think a lot of creative people are a bit scared to understand where it comes from for fear that they will heal themselves and lose their inspiration in the process. I'm not sure that's true, but a lot of the very dark stuff I have discovered where it's come from. And it's a painful process, and I have done, and I'm doing therapy, but I feel my writing has improved as a result of understanding all that. Does that make sense? Have I just made sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I guess, I mean, there's been a couple of pieces of your work that you've done, and it just digs into a place that is so courageous. I mean, there's surface things in terms of, I'm not sure any other Big Finish writer has ever had characters going off for a wee on the side of the road and having a conversation, which happens in that Survivors episode, and talking about periods and other things in terms of there's things that were just happening there, and also with Attica, there's conversations in that have just been really frank and honest, but taken me back because of.
Well, they asked for female writers. They actively sought out female writers. And there has been a very open debate about certain scenes and subjects where they've gone, I'm not quite sure this is going on. I'm going, you want women writers, you're going to get women's stuff in there. It's not, and I'm not the only female writer to have had this conversation, either with Big Finish or anybody else. And it's, if you want women to write about women, I mean, Tenko, which is a series I did in 1981, is a prime example of female writers writing for women about women who actually existed. And there we had scenes in the latrine, we had discussions about periods, we had rape, we had
abortions,
all that stuff that audiences have tended to go, oh, not quite, this is a bit distasteful, but it is the stuff that history and human nature is made of and from, and I think drama is a safe place to debate dangerous issues. It's a very safe place. I'm not being an activist. I'm not yelling in someone's face. I'm just going, this is the problem. This is the problem that needs you need educating about. I've just recently done a film reading of a film called Killing Honor. I think it's a brilliant title, Killing Honor. And it's about forced marriages and honour killings that follow when the bride-to-be refuses to be wed. And it's not a true story, but it's all based on fact, and it was a tough read. I think it's going to be a really tough watch, but I think it's a terribly important thing to get out there. Terribly important that under our very noses this is happening. In London today, this is happening. This isn't something that's the other side of the world, another culture, it's absolutely integrated within ours, and it's our duty to stop these forced marriages.
You've always had a passion for people in need, regardless of the situation. I know you did a lot of prison work early in your career. I'm not sure whether you're still involved in that work, and you actually helped actors come out of the prison system. And Des from EastEnders, I forget the actor's name, I'm afraid. Leslie Grantham, who, once again, you were someone you trained, met in prison, saw value in and gave value to, so went on to a very successful career. Do you want to talk a bit about the work you're doing at the moment with kids as well? That's one of your patron to a charity at the moment.
Because I'm actually patron of Domestic Abuse Volunteer Support Service, so that's taking up my free time, which is a very small, amazing charity that I'm sure the same is true in Australia as everywhere else in the world. The spike of domestic abuse has gone right up. The divorce, people asking for divorce is through the roof. Also, the pregnancies are through the roof as well. There's going to be another baby boom, I think. I have a granddaughter on the way as a result of COVID, I think. Yes, I do. People in need, especially women, my heart goes out to, because I've witnessed and portrayed so many of those women in need. And done the research and met people, and our prison system fails us. It's not rehabilitation, it's nothing but punishment and humiliation and very unhealthy environment, and not what a prison should be for the sake of the society outside the prison, let alone the inmates. So there's a lot of work to be done and championed along the way.
How could people support the charity that you're patron of?
It's at _DAVSS_ on Twitter, and if anybody wants to make a donation, you just follow that link and you'll find all the right things. It's a tiny charity. It only employs 4 people, I think, and it takes care of hundreds and hundreds. It doesn't just support the survivors, it also supports the perpetrators. And it installs panic buttons and rehouses people and re-educates the children, and everybody's taken care of within the system.
That's great. We'll put something in our show notes about that.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of, can we go back to your writing? What's the value of being an actor, do you think, in terms of your writing? I mean, I think what you've now started to bring to the writing of Big Finish, John Dorney, another great actor who you worked with in Omega Factor, is one of the most prolific writers now. I don't know how he finds time to do what he does.
Not do I. He's like, he vomits scripts. He's like, on Monday morning, he's told he needs 10,000 words by Friday, and they're there. He's just written one for me, which we've recorded, and I think it was 10 days from start to finish.
Wow.
The one I'm on is literally in its 3rd year. I hate him.
Dedicated time. What do you think it is that an actor voice brings to writing?
I think I think you trust the actor. I don't think you have to over-explain everything. I don't think you have to go, I feel so sad, and then the sentence, because the sentence and the way you produce it is going to tell the audience that you feel so sad. So you don't have to over-emphasize. You don't have to put the emotional direction in the speech. You just have to put it before the speech, sad, and then it will be done. You trust the actor. I think that's the main thing that you bring, so that your writing is more economic.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, The Omega Factor, Series 2.
I will not be afraid. My mind is the path through which fear enters the world.
Help me! And someone walks straight through her.
Look, there's something wrong. Something evil.
Has been a change?
No, sir.
They're both stable.
Let me introduce Edward
Milton. I remember. You're an MP now, aren't you?
Dr. Wyatt.
Dr. Reynolds.
Let the angel tell thee.
Adam.
They're coming. Stay back!
There's something wrong. I can feel it.
Fear nothing.
Leela, what's happening? What is it?
There's something in here with us.
Adam, help me! It must be stopped. It must be stopped.
Who must?
1984 or 1985 or 1984 or 19... No! Adam, help them.
Big Finish. We love stories.
I wanted to just jump back to your directing, and the first Doctor Who story that you directed was a companion chronicle with Katie Manning called Ghost in the Machine. And I wanted to get your thoughts. What are your memories of that particular production? And it wasn't the easiest script in the world. You had these characters putting on different voices throughout, which is what you do in companion chronicles, but it was very incorporated into the script. You probably don't remember the stories in great detail.
I do remember it. And you can't underestimate the contribution of the sound designers on any script, but particularly on that one, because as you say, people were talking in the machine, out of the machine. They were jumping between the two. They were trapped. They weren't trapped. They were escaping. So they were in a halfway house. It was really complicated. And I thought what the sound designer did extraordinarily well was capture the voice of being captured. So I really, all credit to him. When I got the script, I asked the writer to, and he probably cursed me for it, but I asked him to put by every speech exactly where the character was at any given point, so that I'd made my own notes, obviously, but I didn't want in any way to be muddled about who was where at any particular time, so that was abundantly, so I could point the finger at him if anything went wrong, basically. And directing, I remember the thing about Katie, for all her confidence and exuberance that she shows, she's actually quite insecure as an actor. She's amazingly talented, and deep down she knows that. But she'll do anything she can to not get into the booth. She'll make a cup of tea, she'll go to the loo, she'll have a little chat with someone, she's just desperate to find a nail file, she'll just do anything to not get into the booth. And it's all to do with being nervous. So I was forewarned about this and was told to put it into the schedule, good 40 minutes before you're going to get her out the green room. And I held the door of the studio open, and she said, I just wanted to talk to you about, and she said a particular line. And I said, well, let's do that when you're in there. We'll do it through the microphone. And I kind of put my hand in the small of her back, pushed her through the door. And they all went, oh, you've done it. And we started work. And we went through it as smooth. But it was just getting that first hurdle for her. So that's a very long way of saying, know your actors, because the thing to do is, an actor's confidence is everything. And if you knock it, as a director, you're not going to get the best work out of anybody. So everything you do has to boost the confidence. I don't mean don't get cross if someone hasn't done the work, hasn't done the prep. I mean, Katie was so prepped and ready, and I hardly had to direct her because she's just terrific. But just sussing the personality of your actor and working with that rather than against it.
How did you come to direct that particular story? Was it because it was Katie, or just they wanted to try you out?
I think a bit of both. I mean, they know Katie and I get on. They knew it was just, the one character, so that I wasn't having to deal with loads of personalities. So they were just edging me into directing, and took it from there. I love directing. I absolutely love it. And I think it's probably the control freak in.
So in terms of directing and audio, what do you see as your role for, what's the start of your job, what's the end of your job as director?
Well, that's it in a nutshell. It goes from the very beginning to the very end. Well, not the very beginning, because the script is everything, but when the first draft lands.
First draft, is it?
No.
First draft.
First draft that the story editor has passed. So there'll have been some toing and froing before you see it. But then I can put a few notes on there, not many, because it's normally in brilliant shape. And then the casting, which I adore doing, that all has to be cleared with the producer. And we're now slightly limited because we're only working with people with home studios. A lot of very good people have got home studios, but it means you can't have just anybody. So we cast it, and then the day in the studio, which is always the best bit of it. And then you hear all those words put together, then you hear the words with all the props laid on, and then the final icing on the cake, you hear it with the music laid on top of that. I'm not a huge fan of music. I have a bit of push-pull there with the sound designers, because I think if the actors are doing their job properly, you don't need violins in the background to tell you that it's a sad moment. Silence is golden a lot of the time.
Is that your theatre training that removes a lot of the music?
Probably, but they remind me a lot that, a lot of these things are in the style of the 70s and the 80s, and we have to stick with that genre. So we find a compromise. It always works in the end.
Coming soon, a Big Finish original drama, At a Girl.
I'm so sorry, excuse me. Is this the Air Transport Auxiliary?
New recruit?
Yes.
Welcome to Whitewater.
The menace is the woman who thinks that she ought to be flying in a high-speed bomber when she really has not the intelligence to scrub the floor of a hospital properly.
Why have you framed that quote?
Because I like to remind myself what we're up against. We are a small group of women pilots with a job to do.
The Spitfire is very special. You just need to touch her with your little finger, and she will dance with you.
Come in low. Cut the engine over the boundary edge.
Cut the engine over the boundary edge.
And float down on all 3 points.
Float down on all 3 points.
David, can I ask you something first?
Yes, Daphne.
Will you kiss me?
Amelia, do you know what my 3 favourite words in the English language are? More champagne, please? Not too bad. But no, cold front clearance.
My number 1 tip is not to forget your Bibles.
How will a Bible help us fly a plane? What did I say? Oh, these guys are crazy. We should get Jackie. Oh, sweetie, darling. Oh, adorable. You laughing at me?
She didn't mean a religious Bible. She meant the very pilot's notes, and we call it the Bible.
You'll each be issued one. Never go anywhere without it. It tells you everything you might need to know about flying whatever plane you find yourself in.
We may be on the path to equality for women in aviation, but we still have to take 10 paces for every 5 that a man takes. Have you flown before?
Big Finish. We love stories.
At a Girl is probably one of the most interesting things we've done recently, and very excited that they got a second series and hoping for a third. Don't know whether that's likely to happen or not.
I don't know. It just depends on the figures, really. If we can get enough, people like your good self to plug it for us and get it out there. It's very cheap, and it was a labour of love and a great example of Helen and I working well together, with her producing and me directing.
So how did that project come about? It's your baby in some terms of concept, I believe. Now, how much did it come from? I mean, Tenko is one of my favorite TV series. So it was an amazing, powerful show in the 80s. So there's a feeling of that in terms of female writers, female cast, females. Actually, female stories is, I don't want to say that because that undersells what it is. Because they're not female stories. They're stories that happen to women, but they actually show humanity. So it's not fair to say female stories. Where you decide to come about with, it's certainly something I'd never even heard of, and now I've heard so much about, because it's one of those things that once you hear something, you start reading about it, and suddenly you see it everywhere. What made you go for the Atta Girls?
It stems from a conversation I had about 20 years ago with a friend of mine, and she was just telling me about the Air Transport Auxiliary and this fantastically innovative young woman called Pauline Gower, who campaigned to allow women into the ATA, who were responsible for flying aircraft sometimes to the front line, but usually around Britain, delivering planes to replace ones that had been damaged. And there were a hardcore of 8 women who went, we can do this job just as well as men. What's your problem? And they said, yes, you can come, but you won't get paid as much. And then she went back to Parliament, and she got, in 1942, I think, for equal pay for women. And that's something we're still fighting for. She was extraordinary. And when we wrote, we couldn't write. She went from, I think, 24 to 28 during the war. We couldn't write as if she was in her mid-20s. We had to write her as if she was in her early 50s. She was so mature and so
wise.
On the and had that wonderful stiff upper lip quality to her. And I later found, I couldn't believe this, she's buried about a mile from my home. Isn't that extraordinary? I found that out when we were writing the second series. You'd think it would have somehow... Kate Copeland played her beautifully. I couldn't have asked for anybody else to deliver the voice the way Kate does. It's so subtle what she does. And these women stretched to... There were 110 by the end of the war. And they had a lot of trouble rehabilitating themselves back into society, climbing out of the aeroplane and back into the kitchen. It was tough. And I think, probably a lot to do with women's liberation, because their daughters would hear. I can remember hearing stories from my mum of the war, and her eyes used to light up. She had the most fantastic time during the war. So there were 3 of them looking after 600 servicemen. So she said, she got something like 8 proposals of marriage. She said, do you have any idea how many times I got asked out in a day? And indeed met my dad because of the war, and married during the war. So it was very, in many ways, the best time of her life. And I think that was true of a lot of women, despite the grief and the murders and the tragedies that surrounded it. And again, our sign designer, Ian Meadows, just put such a magic spin on the 6 episodes that are available. I can't give him enough credit.
I mean, the sound design, the music is spectacular. I mean, the theme song is just, it takes you there immediately.
Yeah. Yes, beautiful.
So in terms of coming up with there's been 6 stories so far. And once again, they can be some of them, they're funny, they're charming in terms of the characters, but there's some real deep places and dark places a couple of stories go to. I mean, I was quite so shocked after a couple of them. It got to the end of the episode, and I had to just have a seat for a while and think through what I'd listened to, because it was very powerful.
Can I mention one of them?
Yeah, please do.
Because to my shame, I listened to Atta Girl 1 for the first time this week. Oh. So it was only a couple of days ago that I listened to Helen Goldwyn's story. I think it's called Flying Blind. And that one I think I'm still recovering from that. Very, very intense, tragic story, full of not just one tragedy, but many tragedies in that one. Absolutely blew me away, and it got me thinking, I don't know if... Could a story like that be written by a man? It couldn't be, could it? It can only be written by a woman, from a woman's point of view.
I can't really answer that. I think probably not. But I write James Bond. You know, I think we all have something to offer, rather than saying men can't. I'm sort of rather loath to put that label on it. But I think you're right. I think it probably, if you read the script and went, did a man or a woman write this, you would say a woman wrote it. Definitely. And I that particular story, originally a particular person didn't die. And I rang Helen and I said, I think you have to kill this person. And she went, no, I can't. I like this person too much. I went, I just think you've got to go there. And it was about 2:00 in the afternoon. And anyway, she wrote the scene. And it made her cry, you know, as it can do when you're writing. If something's exciting, your heartbeat goes up, sad, you're crying. And she had to go and do the school run. And she was at the gates, waiting for her children, crying. Someone came up and said, oh, what's happening? I've just had to kill a character in a piece of writing that I'm doing. And I think they thought she was a bit mad. Because you fall in love with who you write about. You fall in love with them. You know these people. And
it's amazing how the story touches my life on various levels, because I was born nowhere near the Second World War, but that story in particular touched me because back in the 40s, that's just what you did with unwanted pregnancies. Whereas myself, my mother was 14 years old. I was adopted, fortunately. So it got me thinking about that and how fortunate I was to be born in that particular time in history. Otherwise, I may have had a completely different fate. And Atta Girl also got me thinking about my grandparents, because I've got a photo of my grandparents who were married in early 1945. My grandfather in his army uniform. They met at a dance. He was on assignment somewhere. So even my life has been touched by the events from back then on various different levels. So it's a fascinating listen, and I'm so glad I finally listened to it.
And that's of the 6 episodes, I think that's if you can have a favorite, I think that's my favorite. And it was the least problematic from conception to conclusion. It was the one that absolutely flowed. We cast it with all our first choices. I think she did maybe 3 drafts, whereas some of the other episodes went through 5, 6, 7, 8 drafts. It was just right from the beginning. I think she's a sensational writer, Helen, really far better than she realizes.
Yeah, I think part of my love for that episode, if that's the right word, is that I didn't know how to feel in so many situations. And so I didn't know which character to be supportive of. I didn't know how to handle the choice she made or the consequences of the choices. And so the ambiguity just caught me up. It's an experience to go through that. I think for men, it's good to be dramatically being able to take somewhere, which is something that's a choice we don't have to make, a place we don't have to be. But it's good for men to be able to dramatically be taken somewhere emotionally on that journey. And I still got to the end not knowing what I thought, which was powerful.
Yeah, very good. Well, it's like I say, it's a safe place to debate dangerous issues, and that particular episode really does open up debate, I think.
Now, pretty exciting. You got a second series out of Atta Girl, which was an amazing feat. I mean, it was so exciting that Big Finish actually went out there with their own original stories, and I thought all their original stories were sensational. I thought it's so exciting that the company was branching out and trying new things, and yours was one of the first to be picked up for a second series. It felt like you must have had to work pretty fast to get that second series out. And you and Helen, because you wrote one, Helen wrote the other.
Yeah.
They're beautifully linked together in terms of is a linking motive, even though the two stories are years apart.
Yeah.
Obviously, a bit of your passion, because domestic violence features quite strongly in that second series. Is that because that's on your heart at the moment, which is why you wanted to explore?
Well, you're never quite sure where these ideas are plucked from, but the fact that I am patron of domestic abuse volunteer support services, because it is once a week I have a discussion or an email or something about it, so it floats around my life quite a lot. So yeah, probably I'm very influenced by that. Watch Ireland creep into my next story. Living on a bay in Ireland. I think you'll find any writer will tell you that their current situation, whether they like it or not, just seeps into what they're writing. And also, if you write it in the morning or the afternoon, or when you take if I was writing now and I stopped to have a cup of tea, if I hadn't stopped to have a cup of tea, the next scene would be a different scene from after I'd had the cup of tea. It's like it's not everything influences the butterfly effect of everything.
Yeah. I'm just being cautious of the time, because Louise, I could talk to you for hours and hours. We have done in the past. Dwayne, is there anything else you want to particularly ask?
No, I think I've asked everything that was specifically on my mind. Just thank you very much for chatting with us, Louise. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. From Big Finish Productions, an original drama, At a Girl.
I fell from the sky today! You can't scare me anymore!
Commander.
David, what's wrong?
A Luftwaffe attack force is heading for the airfield. A big one.
Oh, Lord.
We don't have long to prepare.
Officer King, bring the ATA pilots here, please, as quickly as possible.
And you accuse me of heartlessness? This is no time for photographs.
Well, that's where you're wrong. This is exactly what the papers want, what history needs.
Ha! That got you off my back! No! Oh no! Dennis, spinning, falling. Bail out! She'll be back soon. We'll get you mended.
Oh, Mum!
Of course you do. Look at you. You're changing lives. We're all here doing this incredible job because of you.
Yes, and isn't it wonderful you had to jump out of an airplane whilst being shot at?
Well, that wasn't ideal.
You think you can fix this? You can't repair something like this. It's all broken. You think these people will recover from this? From seeing their friends blown up?
I'm afraid I have some very bad news, Officer Lloyd.
What? Oh, no.
I was terribly fond of her. We all were.
The forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe. I pray that peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Well, once again, thank you so much to Louise for her time. It was a sensational time, just her chatting away. She was in a beautiful part of Ireland with the water lapping around her. But we're really grateful for the fact that she gave so much time to us, and her obvious passion about audio and acting and writing and directing. So thank you, Louise, for that. Appreciate it so much.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
So our usual segment at the end is we love to just recommend something to you. So Dwayne, what have you been listening to?
Well, I'm going to give you something completely unrelated, and for our Australian listeners, or for anyone who's interested in true crime like myself, it's an ABC podcast called Trace. They've done one series already, but every series they look at another sort of true crime story. And this one is about Nicola Gobbo. So she's actually in hiding at the moment. Nicola Gobbo was a lawyer who was an informant for the Victorian police, and she was also the lawyer for many of the famous gangland criminals in Victoria in the late 90s and through the noughties in the 2000s. And so, yeah, it's just her story about from her words, basically, or her version of events. So for anyone who's interested in true crime, I can recommend Trace, all about Trace Series 2, all about Nicola Gobbo.
Sounds fascinating.
What about you, Philip? What's yours?
Well, I've actually delved into some old audio work. I've been listening to some old BBC 7 audio. There's a series that was released in 1984 on The Saint, which is I don't know, it's a bit like a James Bond character. You may or may not know The Saint. But it was a series done by the BBC. They did 3 different productions. And it's interesting because it's a traditional radio production. So I'm quite used now to Big Finish, and I expect the special effects and the amazing music and everything that's been added later. And so it sounds really tight. What's amazing about listening to this production, 84, is you can kind of tell the actors are all around the one microphone. You've got the sound effect person in the background opening and closing doors with the script. So it's the old-fashioned way of recording audio, and it's actually a blast from the past. So the Saint is sort of crime. He's a illegal character who goes around doing good but profiting out of it. So they're very funny. He always wines and dines a different female in every play. So there's always this love angle, but there's also this crime and theft and things. They're quite amusing. So it's been interesting just going back and hearing stuff that's a bit older than what we usually listen to.
So the Saint from the original TV series was Roger Moore. Who's playing the Saint in the audio adaptation? So
the Saint's played by the actor Paul Rees. He's best known for doing some sitcoms in the sort of 80s. Very good-looking, striking actor, but very good with his BBC received pronunciation. As all the cast, if you're going to act in BBC audios, you've got to be able to do the received pronunciation.
You've got to talk proper.
You've got to speak goodly, like.
Very good, very good. All right, so thank you very much, Philip. Looking forward to getting together again with you soon to talk about some lovely, lovely audio. Really appreciate it.
Been great, thank you.
Well, I'm going to give you something completely unrelated, and for our Australian listeners or for anyone who's interested in true crime, like myself, I listen to... Hang on, I'm just going to wait for that car to go past. Boy, it's going past slowly.
Bizarre noise it's making.
So, yeah, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, and one that's just popped up recently in the last few weeks is an ABC podcast called Trace. Oh, what's going on out there? Oh, are they going to stop now? Doing drag races out there. Okay.